She was just an ordinary woman, minding her own business, when fate played its cruel trick. Forced to perform in front of a crowd that thought her nothing more than a joke, she stunned them all, especially one man whose life was about to change forever. But how could someone so humble make a CEO fall so deeply in love? Before we continue, I will love you to hit the bell icon to subscribe and also drop a comment in the comment section. Tell us where you are watching from. Lena never expected this to happen. She was standing at the back of the room, clutching her drink nervously. The laughter from the group around her echoed in the room. She had come to the party to get away from her hectic life, to breathe for a moment, to laugh along with others. She had no idea what she was in for. "Come on, Lena." One of her friends nudged her playfully. "Play something on the piano, you know you're good." Lena froze. She wasn't sure why they had picked her. Maybe it was the way she kept to herself at events like this. Or maybe it was just because she was always the quiet one in the corner. She wasn't the type to stand out. But now, the entire room was looking at her, expecting her to perform. Reluctantly, she walked toward the grand piano placed at the center of the room. The eyes followed her every move, and she felt her palms sweat. Her mind went blank. She sat at the bench, staring at the ivory keys. She had played piano all her life, but today felt different. The laughter from the group, the whispers, the challenge, everything swirled around her, trying to make her doubt herself. But then, without thinking, her fingers touched the keys, and a melody filled the room. The jokes and the whispers faded. One note followed another, building into something unexpected, something powerful. She lost herself in the music. It was no longer about the crowd or the challenge. It was about her love for the piano. And then, as she played, she felt the weight of the world lift. In the back of the room, a man stood frozen. He was the CEO, the one who had never paid attention to anyone like Lena. But now, as he listened, he felt something stir deep inside. Who was this woman? How had he never noticed her before? The music ended, and the room fell silent. For a moment, no one knew how to react. Then, the first clap broke through the stillness, followed by another, until the room was filled with applause. Lena blinked in surprise, not expecting this reaction. But she didn't look up. She kept her eyes on the keys, trying to breathe normally. Her heart pounded in her chest. The applause wasn't for her, right? "You should have told us you could play like that," someone called out from the crowd. Lena smiled faintly, but her cheeks flushed. She quickly stood up and turned to leave the piano. But before she could make her escape, she heard a deep voice that made her stop in her tracks. "Wait." She turned around, startled. It was him, the CEO. David. The one person in the room she had hoped wouldn't notice her. His eyes were locked on her with an intensity she hadn't expected. He wasn't just clapping, he was looking at her as if he had never seen her before. "You have an incredible talent," he said, his voice low and sincere. Lena didn't know what to say. She opened her mouth, but words didn't come. She simply nodded and smiled awkwardly. David took a step forward. "I'm David." "Lena," she whispered, still unsure of what was happening. The party eventually continued, but for Lena, it had shifted. No longer was she just a bystander in the crowd. She couldn't get the CEO's gaze out of her mind. As the evening went on, she tried to focus on her conversation with friends, but her thoughts kept drifting back to him. Was she imagining it? Did he truly notice her? And if he did, why? She wasn't special, just a quiet, humble woman. She was nothing compared to the powerful, polished CEO David appeared to be. The night finally wound down, and Lena made her way to the door, slipping on her jacket, ready to leave. As she passed the group of people, her eyes met David's once more. He was standing alone now, a glass in hand. "Leaving so soon?" he asked, his voice casual, though his eyes were intense. Yeah, I should get going, she replied, feeling suddenly shy. David took a step closer. I'd like to talk to you sometime. About your music, and maybe other things. Lena's heart raced. Sure, she said, before quickly walking out of the door. The following morning, Lena woke up to a message notification on her phone. It was from David. I'd really like to hear you play again. Maybe dinner sometime this week. I'll make it worth your while. Her mind raced. Dinner? With him? This was crazy. But something inside her told her to say yes. After a few minutes of hesitation, she typed back, dinner sounds nice. Before she could second-guess herself, the message was sent. She stared at the screen for a moment before throwing her phone on the bed. What was she getting herself into? Was she truly ready to step into his world? But deep down, she knew she couldn't back out now. The night of the dinner, Lena found herself standing in front of an upscale restaurant, her nerves running wild. What did she have in common with someone like David? He was a CEO, powerful and sophisticated. She was just a regular woman, doing her best to get by. When she entered, she spotted him immediately, tall, sharply dressed, and with an air of confidence that made her feel small. David stood up as she approached, his smile warm, and for a brief moment, all her doubts seemed to melt away. Lena, he greeted, his voice smooth. You look stunning. She smiled shyly. Thank you. You're looking great as well. As they sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily, and Lena felt herself relax. David didn't make her feel small or out of place. He asked about her life, her dreams, and her passion for music. As the evening went on, she started to see him not as a CEO, but as just a man, someone who was genuinely interested in her. But still, she couldn't shake the question, why was he so interested in her? The dinner continued, but Lena could barely focus on the food in front of her. Every word David spoke seemed to resonate deeper than it should have. There was something in the way he looked at her, like he was truly seeing her for the first time. And she couldn't help but feel the pull between them. As the conversation flowed, David leaned in a little closer, his voice softer now. I can't remember the last time I felt this connected to someone, Lena, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. Lena's heart skipped a beat. Was he really saying what she thought he was saying? I feel it too, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She hadn't meant to say it out loud, but it was true. There was something about David, something magnetic, that she couldn't deny. The attraction was undeniable, electric even, and it was drawing her in, bit by bit. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of laughter, shared glances, and an undeniable tension that neither of them seemed willing to break. When the check arrived, David insisted on paying, but it wasn't about the money, it was the way he kept his hand on hers as they walked out of the restaurant. Would you like to go for a walk? He asked, his voice low. Lena nodded, too caught up in the moment to say anything else. It was as if the night was just beginning, and they both knew it. They walked through the quiet streets, the city lights casting a soft glow around them. It was peaceful, almost surreal. Lena couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so at ease with someone. There was a quiet intimacy in the air that was making her heart race, and she didn't want it to end. David stopped in front of a small park bench, gesturing for her to sit. He sat next to her, close, but not too close. Lena felt her pulse quicken, the tension between them thickening with every passing second. She tried to say something, but the words caught in her throat. She didn't know what to say, and that was the problem. She felt so much more than she should. David finally broke the silence. I know this might sound crazy, but there's something about you, Lena. Something real. And I can't stop thinking about it. Lena turned to him, her breath caught in her chest. What do you mean? He smiled, a slow, gentle curve of his lips. I mean you. Your music. The way you make me feel when you're around. I can't explain it, but I want to see where this could go. The words hit her like a wave. They left her breathless, unsure of what to say next. But then, David's hand found hers, and it was like a promise, silent, but powerful. It wasn't long before they found themselves walking along the edge of the park, beneath the soft light of the stars. The night air was cool against Lena's skin, but the warmth from David's hand kept her grounded. I've never done this before, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Fallen for someone so unexpected. David stopped, turning to face her. I never expected to feel this way either, he said, his voice sincere. But I can't deny it. Lena's heart was pounding, but she couldn't look away. She had been waiting for something like this for so long. She had spent so many years feeling invisible, ignored. And now, here was this powerful man, a CEO, seeing her, really seeing her, for the first time. The kiss was the beginning of something neither of them had expected but both secretly wanted. David insisted on driving her home, and as the car pulled up to her apartment, he turned to her, his expression serious yet soft. Can I see you again tomorrow? He asked, his voice low. Lena nodded, feeling a rush of emotion she couldn't explain. I'd like that. David smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Then tomorrow it is. As Lena stepped out of the car and walked up to her door, she couldn't help but glance back. David was still there, watching her, and something in the way he looked at her made her feel like she was the only woman in the world. Lena woke up the next morning with a smile on her face. She couldn't remember the last time she had woken up feeling so alive. Everything about last night had felt right, from the kiss to the way David had held her hand as they walked under the stars. She felt like she was stepping into uncharted territory, and it was thrilling. She couldn't help but wonder what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to let herself feel, truly feel, what this could be. As Lena lay in bed that night, her mind wandered to thoughts of David. She had spent the evening replaying every word, every smile they had shared. But she couldn't help but wonder, why was he so hesitant to fully commit? The next day, David invited her for coffee at a small cafe they both loved. As they settled into a quiet corner, Lena noticed a shift in his demeanor. He seemed distant, as though something was weighing on him. She hesitated but decided to ask. David, is everything okay? He looked up, his eyes filled with something that resembled regret. I've been married twice before, he said quietly, his voice tinged with pain. Both times, I thought I had found the one. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't known this about him. I thought I could make it work, David continued, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. But both times, I was wrong. The women I married weren't supportive. They didn't understand my work, my dreams. They weren't humble. They wanted everything, but never gave anything in return. Lena listened carefully, her heart aching for him. She could see the sadness in his eyes. This was a man who had been broken, betrayed by love, but still willing to try again. David took a deep breath before continuing, the memories still fresh despite the years that had passed. My first wife, Marissa, he began, was beautiful, ambitious, and incredibly talented. But she was also selfish. She wanted the luxury, the fame, the spotlight. She couldn't stand that I was always working, always striving to build something bigger, something better. She wanted me to be there for her, and I tried, but I couldn't keep up with her demands. Eventually, we grew apart. Lena's heart ached as David spoke. She could hear the pain in his voice. He wasn't just talking about his marriage, he was talking about his heart, the piece of him that had been shattered. I thought it was me, David said quietly. I thought I wasn't good enough. But it wasn't. It was her. She wasn't interested in us. She was only interested in herself. Lena didn't know what to say, so she reached out and gently placed her hand on his. He gave her a small, appreciative smile. Then came Anna, David said, his voice filled with more bitterness than before. She was everything I thought I needed. Sweet, kind, and supportive, at least at first. But as the years went on, I began to realize that it was all a facade. She loved the idea of being married to a successful CEO, but not the reality of it. Lena could see the scars on David's soul. He had been hurt, betrayed, not once, but twice. And the idea of trusting someone again seemed like an impossible task. She couldn't handle my success, David continued. When I started making big moves in my career, she became distant. She didn't want to put in the effort, to grow with me. It was as if she was waiting for me to fail, so she could walk away and find someone who could offer her a simpler life. Lena could see the anger and disappointment in his eyes, but beneath it, she saw a vulnerability he hadn't shown before. He was still healing, still searching for something, someone, who would accept him for who he was. I thought I had learned from the first marriage, David said, his voice cracking slightly. But with Anna, I was even more determined to make it work. I put up with her jealousy, her insecurity, her constant demands for my time. I thought if I just kept working, kept providing, everything would be fine. He paused, shaking his head in frustration. But it wasn't. It was never enough. She couldn't support me, Lena. She couldn't be humble enough to understand that I needed someone by my side, not someone who was always taking. Lena's heart broke for him. She had always thought that love was about compromise, about standing by each other through thick and thin. But David's experiences had been different. He had loved deeply, but each time, he had been let down by the people he trusted most. I don't know if I can go through that again, he admitted, his voice soft but firm. Lena squeezed his hand, understanding the weight of his words. She knew that if they were going to move forward, it couldn't be rushed. He needed to trust again. And so did she. David sat back in his chair, staring out the window. The quiet between them stretched on, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Lena could feel his pain, but she could also sense his willingness to try again. The thing is, Lena, David said finally, I've spent so many years thinking I wasn't enough. I thought that because I failed in those marriages, I wasn't worthy of love. But with you, something's different. Lena's heart raced. She wasn't sure what this meant yet, but she knew that this was the moment when everything could change. David looked at her, his gaze steady. I can't promise you forever right now. I can't promise that everything will be perfect. But what I can promise is that I'll try. I'll give you everything I have, because you're worth it. Lena felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it wasn't from sadness, it was from hope. She had found someone who truly saw her, truly understood her. And for the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, this could be the love that would last. As the weeks passed, David couldn't shake the thought that Lena had brought something into his life that he never thought possible. She was more than just a beautiful woman, she was his peace, his calm in a world that had been chaotic for far too long. It wasn't just her presence, it was her humility, her kindness, the way she made him feel seen for the first time in years. Every time they were together, David felt as though he was exactly where he was meant to be. Lena completed him in a way he couldn't explain. Where he had been broken, she had slowly mended him. And it wasn't just his heart that had healed, it was his spirit. She challenged him, but in a way that was gentle, encouraging him to be better, to do better. He had been afraid of love for so long, afraid of giving someone his heart again. But Lena showed him that love wasn't something to be afraid of, it was something to embrace. He had fallen for her more deeply with each passing day, and every time she smiled at him, he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. For Lena, the feeling was mutual. She had never imagined that someone like David, with all his success and power, would see her, really see her, for the person she was. He hadn't been drawn to her for her beauty or her modest life. He was drawn to her heart, her authenticity, and her passion for life. Lena had spent so many years hiding behind walls, afraid to let anyone in. But with David, those walls began to crumble. He made her feel safe, cherished, and, most importantly, loved. The way he supported her dreams, the way he believed in her even when she doubted herself, it all made her fall even harder for him. Together, they were becoming something better, something stronger. It was as if they had found a missing piece of each other, and now that they had it, nothing else mattered. As Lena and David spent more time together, their relationship flourished in ways they hadn't expected. David had always been driven by ambition, constantly working, constantly striving for more. But with Lena by his side, he had learned to slow down, to appreciate the simple things. She had shown him that there was more to life than work, that joy could be found in quiet moments, in the laughter shared over dinner, and in the touch of a hand when words weren't enough. For Lena, David had pushed her to be braver, to take risks and chase her dreams. She had always played it safe, content in the background, not wanting to be noticed. But David made her believe that she was worthy of the spotlight, that her talents were not just things to be hidden away but to be shared with the world. They were making each other better, in ways neither had anticipated. There were still challenges ahead, of course. No relationship was perfect. But the difference now was that they faced them together. The trust between them had grown so strong that even in the hardest times, they knew they would stand by each other. David had shared his fears with Lena, fears of losing her, of being hurt again. But Lena had always reassured him, showing him through her actions that she was in this for the long haul. She wasn't going anywhere. And David, for the first time in his life, felt safe. He felt secure in a way he never had before. They had become partners in every sense of the word, not just in love, but in life. They built each other up, pushed each other to be their best selves. Together, they were unstoppable. Lena had always been afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of showing the world who she truly was. But with David, she had found the courage to shed those layers of insecurity. He saw her, truly saw her, and loved every part of her. And in return, she had learned to let him in completely, to trust him with her heart. Their love wasn't dramatic or fast, it was quiet, steady, and real. It wasn't about grand gestures or flashy promises. It was in the small moments, like the way David would hold her hand in the car, the way they could spend hours just talking, or the way their eyes would meet and everything else would fade away. Lena had never believed in fairy tales. But with David, she realized that maybe real love wasn't so different. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lena turned to David. She had never felt more certain about anything in her life. "David," she said softly, her voice steady, "I don't know where this journey will take us, but I want to go there with you. I want to build a future with you, together." David looked at her, his eyes filled with emotion. "Lena," he whispered, "you already have my heart. I'll go anywhere with you. I've never felt more sure of anything." And in that moment, they both knew, they had found something rare, something beautiful. They had found love, not just with each other, but with the version of themselves they had become together. David and Lena sat on the couch, the soft light from the fireplace casting a warm glow around them. The air between them was thick with the promise of something more, something solid, something unbreakable. "David," Lena began, her voice tinged with excitement, "I've been thinking about it a lot lately. We've been through so much already, and I can't imagine my life without you. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you, one where we're not just partners in love, but partners in everything." David's heart skipped a beat as he turned to face her. Her eyes shone with sincerity, with hope, with love. He had always feared that love would bring pain, but with Lena, it felt different. This was the kind of love he had longed for his entire life. "I want that too," he whispered, his hand finding hers. "You make me want things I never thought I needed. I'm ready, Lena. Ready for us, for our future." They both sat in the quiet of their shared moment, the weight of their words settling into their hearts. A future together was something they both desperately wanted. But little did they know, the road ahead wouldn't be smooth. Not with the shadows of David's past looming. The excitement of their engagement was met with unexpected tension when David's ex-wives, Marissa and Anna, learned about his upcoming marriage. The past, once buried, was resurfacing. David had spent years building his empire, but those years had been stained by 2 failed marriages. Both women had left him for reasons that still haunted him. But now, with Lena in his life, he was more determined than ever to move forward, to build a life with her. However, Marissa and Anna weren't ready to let go. They had invested too much of themselves in David's wealth and success to watch him walk away without a fight. It started subtly, at first. A phone call from Anna, asking about the future of their shared assets. Then, Marissa showed up unannounced at David's office, demanding her share of the properties they had accumulated together. Lena could sense the shift in David, the subtle anxiety in his eyes. They had just made plans for their wedding, but it was becoming clear that the women from his past weren't ready to let him go, nor were they ready to let go of what they thought was owed to them. One afternoon, as Lena and David were discussing wedding plans, David received a call. His face hardened as he listened, and when he hung up, Lena could tell something was wrong. "Lena, I need to talk to you," he said, his voice strained. "Anna is threatening to take me to court over the business assets. She says she's entitled to a percentage of my shares, even though we've been divorced for years. And Marissa, she's not any better." Lena's heart sank. "Are they trying to take what's yours?" she asked quietly, her voice shaking with emotion. David ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every movement. "They're both trying to push me into a corner. They want a percentage of my properties. If this keeps up, it could ruin everything we've worked for." Lena stood up, walking to him. "David, we can get through this. You and me, we can fight them. We'll find a way." David turned to face her, his gaze filled with love and admiration. "You don't understand, Lena. I've spent so much of my life trying to avoid conflict, trying to keep the peace. But now they want more from me. And I'm scared that this will ruin everything, including us." Lena stepped closer, her heart full of determination. "We will fight together. I believe in us." David and Lena hired the best lawyers money could buy, but the legal battles ahead were daunting. Marissa and Anna were playing dirty, pulling every string they could to drag David through the mud. They filed lawsuits, demanded settlements, and attempted to bully David into compliance. The pressure began to take its toll. David found himself working late into the night, constantly on the phone with his lawyers, dealing with the emotional exhaustion of the situation. Lena stood by his side, offering support, but there were moments when she felt helpless. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," David admitted one night, as they sat on the couch, the weight of the world pressing down on him. Lena held his hand tightly. "You don't have to do this alone, David. I'm here. We're in this together." And for a moment, David let himself believe it. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. The strain of the legal battles began to push them both to their limits. Every day, it felt like a new setback. The court hearings were draining. The media began to catch wind of the drama, adding fuel to the fire. David's name was being dragged through the mud, and with it, Lena's life was being turned upside down as well. One evening, David came home looking defeated. He had just received another call from his lawyer, and the news wasn't good. "They're not backing down," David said, his voice filled with frustration. "They want even more than what we've already agreed on. They want to take everything, my properties, my company. They're going after my legacy." Lena felt the weight of his words, but she refused to let him break. "We can still fight. This isn't over." David shook his head. "Maybe it's time to walk away, Lena. Maybe we should just take what we can and move on, start fresh." Lena's heart ached. "I don't want to run, David. Not from you, not from them. We'll figure this out together." Just when things seemed at their darkest, David received an unexpected visit from an old business partner, someone who had helped him build his empire in the early years. The partner had been keeping an eye on the legal situation and offered a solution. "I've been watching what's been happening with Anna and Marissa," the partner said. "I know how much this means to you, and I'm willing to help you fight back. We can take them down. But it will take everything we've got." David was skeptical, but Lena's belief in him never wavered. "We have to trust this," she said, her hand on his. "This is our chance." The legal team David hired, combined with his business partner's help, began to turn the tide. Marissa and Anna had underestimated the power of David's network. The court case that once seemed like an impossible battle began to shift in their favor. One by one, the pieces fell into place. The lawsuits against David were dismissed, and the assets that Marissa and Anna had tried to claim were returned to David, legally and rightfully. With the legal battle behind them, David and Lena were free to focus on the future. One night, as they sat by the fire, David turned to Lena with a look in his eyes that made her heart skip a beat. "I promised you I'd give you everything I have," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm ready to keep that promise." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Opening it, he revealed a ring, simple but stunning. "Lena, will you marry me? Will you be mine forever?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. "Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes." David and Lena's wedding was everything they had dreamed of. It wasn't just about the vows, they had fought for this love, and every step of the journey made their bond stronger. The ceremony was intimate, held in a quiet garden under the stars. As they exchanged their vows, Lena couldn't help but think of all the obstacles they had faced together. Their love had survived the storms, and now, it was time. As they settled into their new life, David and Lena knew that the journey wasn't over. The battles they had fought had made them stronger, but their love was what truly kept them together. David had finally found the one person who would stand by him, no matter the challenges. And Lena had found the man who saw her for who she truly was, a woman who could love fiercely, and who deserved to be loved in return. They had overcome their pasts, and now, they could look forward to the future, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. With the past behind them and the future ahead, David and Lena knew that no matter what life threw at them, they would face it together. Their love was unbreakable, and their bond, stronger than ever. And as they stood together on the balcony of their home, watching the sun set on the horizon, they both knew, this was only the beginning.